You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Hey, this is John Preston, Marine Combat Veteran and Pacific Records recording artist. Just reaching out to have you check out our new album, Battle Cry, Songs of America's Heroes, an album featuring phenomenal other combat veteran artists like Scott Brown of the Scooter Brown Band, Ryan Weaver, Rowdy Johnson, just an incredible mix of people. This is all veterans telling our stories and our lives, and we're giving 100% of our proceeds to the Valkyrie Initiative to help veterans and first responders integrate back into society. I myself have battled with post-traumatic stress for many years and lost my own brother, a Marine Corps veteran, to suicide. I ask that you step with us and make this happen. We are in pre-order right now and release on March 17th. Go to iTunes, go to Amazon, buy. We plan on making the charts and making it at a very high level, and your support right now makes a difference. This is the release of my new song, Superman Falls, which is actually about the loss of my own brother, which happened last year, and I would love for everyone to check it out, to listen, and hopefully it'll make a difference in many lives.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687. 687.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it. There to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
Sometimes riders feel lost, unsure why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing into full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, offering manuscript critiques and line edits through a mentoring editorial style. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services, visit blackwolfeditorial.com.
Here's George Foreman with InventHelp.
Hi, I'm George Foreman. Do you have an idea for a new product or invention? People ask me all the time, George, how do I get my idea in front of companies? How do I get a patent? What do I do next? Do you have the same questions? I'll tell you like I'll tell them all. Call my friends at InventHelp.
Call InventHelp today for free information. InventHelp has been helping inventors for more than 30 years and has sales offices nationwide. InventHelp can submit your invention to companies who are interested in receiving new ideas. If you have an idea and want to try to patent it and submit it to companies, you should call InventHelp today for free information.
Listen, I can't guarantee a company will be interested in your idea, but I believe every inventor deserves the opportunity to step into the ring and take their best shot. Put InventHelp in your corner.
Get your free inventor's information. Call 1-800-353-6490. That's 1-800-353-6490. Again, 1-800-353-6490.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, Internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
My name is Jessie. I'm a United States Special Forces widow. This gives me a unique perspective on the world around us. If you're willing to listen, I'll tell you how I see it, and I won't pull any punches. This is my POV, which stands for Point of View.
All right, this is Jessie. How y'all doing out there tonight? I do miss you when we're not talking. Now, I got a couple of quick announcements. Yes, I know all about the terror attack in London. I know all about all that stuff that's going on today. We are not covering that tonight. What? Yes, we're not covering that tonight. Instead, I've got a very special interview I want to play for you tonight. Now, it was recorded earlier, but it is absolutely fantastic. I had the honor and privilege to interview Commander Kirk Lippold. You're going, who's he? Have any of you out there ever heard of the USS Cole bombing? He was the commander on the USS Cole when it was attacked. Yes, he was the one whose job it was to save the ship, save the crew, and bring them safely home after the attack. Now, I could tell you a quick summary of his story, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, because the interview is commercial free, we are going to take a brief commercial break, and then we'll be right back with the interview with Commander Lippold.
If you're 85 or younger, would you like peace of mind and comfort for your family? We're Final Expense Direct with an urgent message for you. The average funeral today costs over $8,000, but the most you'll get from government benefits is $255. How will your family pay the difference? We can help. Our senior plans start as low as just $1 a day and pay up to $30,000 for a funeral and other final expenses. Peace of mind is easy. There's no medical exam. You'll have lifetime coverage, and your plan can't be canceled as long as you pay your premiums. Call now for free information about our senior plans. Answer a few simple questions and receive approval right on the phone. Plus, call right now and we'll give you a discount prescription card for free. Call 800-553-8687. That's 800-553-8687. Again, 800-553-8687.
Here's George Foreman with InventHelp.
Hi, I'm George Foreman. Do you have an idea for a new product or invention? People ask me all the time, George, how do I get my idea in front of companies? How do I get a patent? What do I do next? Do you have the same questions? I'll tell you like I'll tell them all. Call my friends at InventHelp.
Call InventHelp today for free information. InventHelp has been helping inventors for more than 30 years and has sales offices nationwide. InventHelp can submit your invention to companies who are interested in receiving new ideas. If you have an idea and want to try to patent it and submit it to companies, you should call InventHelp today for free information.
Listen, I can't guarantee a company will be interested in your idea, but I believe every inventor deserves the opportunity to step into the ring and take their best shot. Put InventHelp in your corner.
Get your free inventor's information. Call 1-800-353-6490. That's 1-800-353-6490. Again, 1-800-353-6490.
Everything is changing. Little Superman falls.
Hey, this is John Preston, Marine Combat Veteran and Pacific Records recording artist. Just reaching out to have you check out our new album, Battle Cry, Songs of America's Heroes, an album featuring phenomenal other combat veteran artists like Scott Brown of the Scooter Brown Band, Ryan Weaver, Rowdy Johnson, just an incredible mix of people. This is all veterans telling our stories and our lives, and we're giving 100% of our proceeds to the Valkyrie Initiative to help veterans and first responders integrate back into society. I myself have battled with post-traumatic stress for many years and lost my own brother, a Marine Corps veteran, to suicide. I ask that you step with us and make this happen. We are in pre-order right now and release on March 17th. Go to iTunes, go to Amazon, buy. We plan on making the charts and making it at a very high level, and your support right now makes a difference. This is the release of my new song, Superman Falls, which is actually about the loss of my own brother, which happened last year, and I would love for everyone to check it out, to listen, and hopefully it'll make a difference in many lives.
All right, now I have one announcement before I start playing the interview. The album Battlefield Cry, the one with the Superman Falls song, is out. It's on iTunes, it's on Amazon. We have a couple of links to it on our website. There's one on the chat page. There's soon to be one on the advertisers and affiliates page. So I encourage you, please support the Valkyrie Initiative through your purchase. Now, here's my interview with Commander Lippold.
All right, this is Jessie. How y'all doing out there today?
You know, I miss you when we're not talking. No, I really do. But wait, I'm not alone. I'm joined today by someone very special. Someone's name who you guys might even recognize if you think back a few years. Commander Kirk Lippold. Now, I know one thing about you, Commander. You were the commander of the USS Cole during a very rough patch in that ship's existence. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Sure, Jessie. Well, first, thank you for having me on the show. Little history about me. Well, I grew up in Carson City, Nevada, went off to the Naval Academy, graduating in 1981, and upon graduation served in a variety of ships, from a tank landing ship to Aegis guided missile cruisers and destroyers, and ultimately worked my way up where I stood back on the flight deck at the very back end of USS Cole and said the three greatest words of a naval officer's career: I relieve you. And it was with those three simple words that I carried out a centuries-old time-honored tradition and took command of a $1 billion national asset and responsibility for about 300 of our nation's finest sailors. And we had about 1 year to get the ship ready for deployment to the Middle East from our home port of Norfolk, Virginia. We left that home port and headed toward what would unfortunately be our destiny in the port of Aden, Yemen.
Okay. Now, I've done a little bit of research on this, and obviously, I'm not one of the 300 or so people that was there. But there was nothing anybody could do to stop this.
Well, the morning of October 12th, 2000, Jessie, we pulled into the port because we were below 50% fuel. It was supposed to be a brief stop for fuel lasting 6 to 8 hours, where we were expected to take on around 250,000 gallons to top ourselves off before we actually rounded the corner, went through the Strait of Hormuz, and entered the Middle East area of operations in the Arabian Gulf. And we pulled in about 8:30 that morning, got tied up around 9:30, and actually started pumping fuel at 10:38 that morning. As part of routine import operations, we had contracted for 3 boats to come out and remove trash off the ship. 2 boats came out, and one to the middle of the ship, one back by the flight deck, and the crew dumped all the trash, the hazardous material, and the plastics that we can't dump at sea. And we're halfway across the harbor when a 3rd boat came out. Everyone kind of made the assumption that, well, it looks about the same length, it's about the same size, it's following the same approach path, and came down the side of the ship, looked just like a garbage barge, came to the middle of the ship, but unfortunately we would discover later that it was a waterborne improvised explosive device. 2 suicide bombers that blew a 40 by 40 foot hole in the side of the ship, plunged us into darkness. I think immediately everybody thought we'd had a fuel explosion, but very quickly we figured out it in fact been a terrorist attack. And then it was just the crew doing absolutely everything you could ever ask for them, despite the smoke, the noise, the carnage, the injuries, the damage to the ship. They did what they had to do to save that ship and their shipmates.
Wow. All right. I want to ask a couple of questions about that day because I've seen some brief first-person accounts, but I've never been able to understand. So you were what were you doing before this happened?
Right when the explosion happened, I had been up in my cabin for about an hour. I had been signing routine reports. I had gotten a request for I checked off the import refueling checklist, made sure that all the checklist items were complete, all the valves were properly aligned. My main propulsion assistant had signed off of that, followed by my chief engineer. My supply officer had come up with me with the executive officer to get these boats alongside that we had planned for so that we could get the trash removed. And part of the reason for getting the trash and doing that and even allowing that when we hadn't originally scheduled it is we looked at it and said, if we can get rid of all this stuff now, in 4 days when we pull into Fifth Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, we can get rid of a lot of stuff for free. But if we do it right now, it lets the crew get on liberty earlier. What's left on the ship can be handled by the duty section for that evening. We could start our in-theater intelligence briefings that much sooner. So there were a lot of, little drivers that kind of changed our mind when we pulled into the port of Aden that morning. But overall, it was nothing more than a routine fuel stop. What we did not realize until the FBI got on board along with NCIS and began to do the investigation in those first few critical days is that we would discover over the next 2 weeks that how this attack had been set up with a safe house, with a place where they had actually built the bomb into the boat.
Wow.
It was very similar to how they had set this up for the embassy bombings that had occurred in Nairobi, Kenya, and Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and Nairobi, Kenya, 2 years before us. It had all the same hallmarks. And what we didn't realize is that Al-Qaeda had been in that port for over a year, watching when Navy ships pulled in, what pier they went to, what side they moored to, what boats came out to them, how they behaved around them. So when they came out, that boat mimicked in many respects what the other boats had seen. Now, you and I know, Jesse, that there is nothing. People are going to try and be armchair quarterbacks anytime a major incident like this happens, especially when there's a loss of life. But at the end of a very thorough investigation, the Department of Defense would look at it and say, you know what? There were security measures the captain could have done that morning that I chose not to do because of our geographic circumstances. Even if he had done everything possible, nothing he would have done would have mitigated or prevented that attack. So, I'll always bear the burden. There was one accountable officer that morning, and that was me as the commanding officer. But there's a difference between accountability, responsibility, and blame. I will always live with the fact that 17 sailors died on my watch, that 37 were wounded on my watch. But nonetheless, when you look at how my crew performed before, during, and after, it speaks volumes, and that's why USS Cole was saved and was subsequently repaired and is back in service off of Yemen today.
Wow. So I know you gave the big brushstroke overview. So you're sitting in your office doing paperwork. You said you were plunged into darkness, so I'm guessing the lights went out when this happened.
They did. When the explosion hit, three things happened. First one was initially sitting there, all the power failed. It was complete darkness where I was. And emergency lights came on. I literally came up in the brace position, grabbing the underside of my desk as everything popped up and slammed back down. The bulkheads were going like a wave, in and out. Ceiling tiles popped out. Coffee and water spilled on the carpet in my cabin. But when I could let go, I finally went to the door of my cabin. I looked down the passageway or hallway. There was 2 emergency lights, one by my door and one halfway down the passageway. And suddenly at the far end, this gray cloud comes around the corner. It rolls toward me, and then it silently washes over me. You could smell the dust. You could smell the fuel. But there was also this acrid metallic tang that settled in the back of my mouth, and I didn't know what it was. A young officer who lived in the stateroom right behind my cabin came out, grabbed the door jamb, looks at me wide-eyed, no panic, and using good sailor-like language asked me, what the F was that? Then it was like a light went off, and he looks at me and he says, fuel. And he takes off into that gray cloud, headed toward what could be the danger, to see what he could go find out. I took one step out of my cabin to follow him and stopped. We had pulled the ship in, turned it around, and moored it starboard side or right side to a pier out in the middle of the harbor. When the explosion had gone off, the ship had been violently thrust up into the right. So within seconds, I very quickly knew that it had been an attack. Because if it had been a fuel explosion being next to the pier, I should have been shoved left. Thrust up into the right, the only thing on the left side of the ship was open harbor water, so instinctively I knew something had come alongside and detonated. I went back into my cabin, unlocked the safe where I kept the keys to all the ship's weapon systems, the gun, the torpedoes, the missiles. Jesse, I pulled out a 9mm pistol, loaded it, chambered around, decocked it, grabbed 2 clips of ammunition, took a deep breath, ran down outside to the middle of the ship. One of the things that had happened in all of this as I stood there looking toward the back of the ship, and I didn't know it at the time, is that the announcing system for the ship, or what we call the 1MC, had failed.
Wow.
The backup system for it
and for those that
failed.
Don't know, the 1MC is your main communication system on the ship.
Absolutely, in an emergency, and the battery backup for it failed. So there was no way to tell the crew what had happened, where to go, or what to do. So that was the circumstances we were in right there. I'm sitting there holding a 9mm, and all I could think to myself was, well, you need to get to the port side and see how bad the damage is.
And the port side was where the explosion.
Go ahead.
The port side's the left side where the explosion was.
Correct.
Okay.
And as I took a deep breath to go head out to the left side, knowing what might be my destiny, all I could think of was if you see someone that doesn't belong on here, you make them duck first and don't leave an empty round in the chamber.
Well,
fortunately, when I
continue.
Go ahead.
I would continue.
All I could think when I got out to the port side, the first person I actually saw was my chief gunner's mate, who was responding with his security teams to reestablish the defensive perimeter around the ship. He's got his flak vest, his helmet, M14. We look over the side. We make a damage assessment on the spot. We determine that it was, in fact, a suicide boat. There were little pieces of boat and bomber all over the top side of the ship. I told him, don't allow anyone alongside. I went up to the bridge. My operations officer and navigator were there. I contacted the Yemenese port authorities and asked them to do 3 things. Freeze all harbor movements since we didn't know where the attack had come from. Notify local hospitals and send boats out to us to get the wounded off. And the Yemenis agreed to do all of those things. At that point, though, the ship is in trouble. It is listing or leaning 5.5 degrees to port and down 1 degree by the bow. I mean, you could literally feel our ship sinking beneath our feet.
Now, how bad is 5.5 degrees for those who don't know?
It's huge. On a ship like that, of that size, 505 feet, 8,400 tons, that is a huge difference. I mean, you can literally feel it. And in some of the earlier pictures you can find on the internet, you can still see the ship listing to port because of the hole in the side.
Now, I do have a question for you. And first of all, you are talking to a concealed carry carrier who happens to carry a 9mm.
Yep.
So, and I was taught to shoot by someone in the Navy. My cousin was United States Navy.
Good on him.
He was one of those, I affectionately call them crazy Navy lunatics. One of those that come out of Seal Beach, Coronado, California.
Yep.
You know exactly what I'm saying. And for my listeners who may not understand, I know I've said this on the air before, but I'll say it again. My cousin was a United States Navy SEAL.
Good man, and thank you for his service.
Oh, he did what he loved. And I say did because he is no longer with us.
I'm sorry to hear that.
He died doing what he loved.
Well, that counts.
And I wouldn't, as much as I miss him for my own interactions, I know he wouldn't have had it any other way. So you're sitting there, you have no way of communicating, you've got all this chaos going on, the ship is literally trying to sink out from under your feet. What do you do?
At that point, believe it or not, after the bridge, I went down to my cabin, started walking toward the back end of the ship in the dark because I knew I needed to get to the central control station, which is like the nerve center for engineering and damage control, where we respond to try and control all the damage. And as I'm walking down the passageway on the right side toward the back end of the ship, I got my first piece of good news, because in the back of the ship, I can see lights on. Right then and there, I know that if I've got lights on in the back 1/3, that means I've got a generator running, which means I can get power to pumps, which means I can save the ship. I actually walked to the middle of the ship, and already the crew was running by me, and I could tell on the spot they were doing one of three things. They were either doing damage control to save the ship, triage to save their wounded shipmates, or security to prevent another attack. Nobody had told them what to do, when to do it, where to go. They fell back on their training. All those 15 months of preparation paid off, and now they were doing exactly what they needed to until the chain of command could reestablish itself and start directing the bigger effort. I went into the blast area itself. I could look down in the hole in the side of the ship. I could see the sunlight coming in. We estimated that the Yemenis unfortunately kept pumping fuel on the ship for about 5 minutes after the blast had occurred at about a 2,000 gallon per minute rate. Down in all that fuel, though, we haven't electrically isolated it. As I'm standing there at the edge of the blast hole near the galley where we prepared the crew's meals, you could smell thousands and thousands of gallons of fuel, but now I could hear down in that hole the popping and crackling of live electrical wires. And I'm thinking, not only have we had a devastating explosion, now I'm going to have a major fire on my hands. Turns out that we didn't. They got it electrically isolated. We were later able to spray that whole area down with firefighting foam to put a barrier over it so it wouldn't flash to a fire. And I'll tell you, Jesse, this is how well the crew did. We were able to get the ship stable in a little over an hour. We were able that first day to evacuate the initial 33 wounded off the ship in about 99 minutes, and of those 33, 32 would survive.
That is an amazing testimony to how well trained your crew was, that even without direct orders, they'd absorbed the training and they knew what to do.
Yep. And that's why I'm proud of them to this day. I mean, you can't ask for better. Let's face it, anyone that's in the military, anyone that's a first responder, you train, you hope, and you pray that you never had to put your skills to use. In our case, we did, and obviously they paid off magnificently, and that's why the crew, we still stay in touch with each other today.
Now, I do have a couple of questions for you. Were all of the deceased recovered or not?
Yes, every single one of the sailors. Initially, the first day, there would be 5 casualties that we would have identified that would immediately begin that long journey home to their families. The other 12 were trapped in the wreckage of the mess line, the galley area, and main engine room number 1 that bore the brunt of the blast in the middle of the ship. And over the next 8 days, we would recover every single one of those sailors. The FBI would generally, and the Mobile Diving Salvage Unit 2 would locate them, bring them up. We draped off the middle of the ship. I did not want the crew to be exposed to what they might see, so consequently, the only person that did identifications with the FBI and NCIS was me. And at the end of that, we would drape their bodies with a flag, and we would hold a departure honor ceremony where we would assemble the crew on the flight deck. We would call them to attention and render a hand salute, and we would walk the body down onto the pier to a boat. It would be escorted ashore by U.S. Marines and remain under Marine guard all the way through their trip back to the United States.
Leave no man behind.
Absolutely not.
Well, it sounds like your crew was able to fulfill both saving the ship and the very distinct military tradition and what I believe is drilled into every member of the United States Armed Forces. Leave no man behind. And I don't know if you've read my bio. I am a Special Forces widow. Now, I do my show under a pseudonym because my information has been put out by ISIS or Daesh. Take your pick for the what you call them. Not once.
Whatever pisses them off most, so Daesh works just fine.
That's actually the term I usually use on air.
Yep.
So my information has been put out by them not once but twice. So I do my show under a pseudonym. But I will say that I know all about that dignified transfer. I have received the knock not once, but twice. And that's something I don't know that I've shared on air before. When I was 19, the first time when I was 19 and a half, I didn't know this, but my cousin had listed me as next of kin because his parents had predeceased him in a private plane crash. And the day I turned 18, he made me his next of kin. Because, quite frankly, he and my mother didn't get along. He and I were best of friends. So my first knock was at age 19 and a half. The second one was over a decade later. So I am the proud keeper of not one, but 2 casket flags.
Well, that is a heck of a sacrifice to have made on behalf of our nation, and I think certainly for me, and I'm sure for many of your listeners, they owe you a debt of gratitude for that.
And I'd do it all again. And then, I guess, call me crazy, I remarried another member of the United States Armed Forces. Now, this one wasn't Special Forces, but he still is United States Army active duty to this day. My husband...
Wonderful.
My second husband wears the uniform. In fact, he's with his unit right now training for a deployment.
Wow. Heck of a sacrifice. Well, our prayers are with him that he stays safe throughout and gets home safely as well.
I have a feeling his will be a lot less eventful than yours. So, okay, did you write letters to the families of the fallen? Obviously you had to wait for official notifications, but did you also do something personally, write letters to the fallen, or how did you personally handle it?
I wrote a formal letter to each of the families, but I think the most important thing came afterwards. And one of the things that was very difficult, Jesse, was the fact that there was a formal investigation going on for months. Many of the families were very upset that all they got was this, while heartfelt, it was a somewhat formal letter from me about their son or daughter, wife or husband. But eventually, when the investigation was wrapping up, one of the things that I felt was very important to do was to reach out to the families. And of course, like any large bureaucracy, the easy answer at first is always no. So when I approached the Navy about going and visiting with each of the family members who'd lost a loved one, they said no. But I knew it was the right answer. I knew it was the right thing to do. And so I persevered. And to the Navy's credit, they came around and essentially gave me a blank check with my command master chief, the senior enlisted on board, and we would travel around the country for almost 3.5 weeks. And, as you know, 17 sailors doesn't mean 17 nice little houses behind a white picket fence. 17 families for us was going out and visiting with 29 different family groups. Mothers, fathers, stepmothers, stepfathers, sisters, brothers, stepbrothers and sisters, grandparents, because they were the ones that were listed as the primary and secondary next of kin. And I felt it was important to sit down, and one of the things I'm very proud of is that during my time in command, I knew each of those 17 sailors. And as I sat with the families, and there wasn't a family that we didn't shed a tear with, I was able to tell a story about how I, as the captain, had interacted with them. And for a brief few seconds, to be able to bring that sailor back to life in the eyes of that family was more important than anything I've ever done in my life.
Well, I have to say thank you for that. Trust me, those remembrances and those words, and you're talking to a Gold Star ×2. Those memories and those words mean so much. So
yep. I just knew it was the right thing to do.
I still get calls to this day from some of my cousins and my husband's old buddies. To this day. And it's been a considerable time on both counts. But
yep.
The funny thing about my cousin, we share a birthday.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Always good to have those kinds of connections.
No, the date is the amazing thing. You could say we were both born to be patriots. We were both born on
Perfect.
4th of July.
Well, anyway, the one thing that I look at, Jess, is that, that the ship is still out there defending freedom. And, I can't ask for better of my sailors. Some of them are still, believe it or not, I mean, we're coming up on 17 years since the attack. And all those young little, seaman recruits, they're now the chiefs and master chiefs in the Navy. So they've got an experience under their belt that, they're still passing on as a legacy to the next generation of sailors, which is very important.
How does it make you feel to see the USS Cole off the coast of Yemen today?
Well, I look at it as it wasn't put there on purpose, but it certainly sends a signal that you can hit the U.S. Navy, but you aren't going to knock it down, and that we're going to continue to be at the tip of the spear. We're going to be the vanguard of freedom, and the United States is always going to stand for what's just and right.
Wow, I have to say I love that quote. I really do, because I've often said I may not agree with everything my country's ever done. She's made her mistakes, but I wouldn't live anywhere else. And I will.
Yep, exactly right.
And I love my country with all my heart. So when you finally got out of the Navy, all the investigations were over, all the hubbub. What did you do with your life? What did you do that first week or two out of the Navy? Was it just one of those, I'm going to take a week and sleep? Or was it, I already know what my next mission is?
I didn't get out of the Navy for another 7 years after the attack. I mean, I didn't retire till June 2007, and the attack was in October 2000. So for me, it was like anyone else that I think retires. I mean, you kind of know it's not a job for life. It's not designed to be. And when you retire, you're very proud to have served your nation, and you're going to get a check every month from the government, but then you go find real work. And I chose to get out and keep speaking to the American public in the business world about the importance of leadership, about the need for crisis management and thinking things through before the crisis happened, not during and after it. So that's principally what I do, is lecture on those subjects, because obviously leadership is a timeless topic, and I still do it today and absolutely love it.
So you are essentially, you can't be fired because you work for yourself.
That's true. If I get fired, it's because, I've decided it's time to hang up my spurs for good and go enjoy green pastures and enjoy the sunrise and the sunset. But I'm far, far from that right now because, I love what I do. So if you love what you do, is it really work? And why would you want to stop?
I got to admit, some jobs just get in your blood and they're almost like an infectious disease, but you don't want a cure.
Like I said, I love what I do. So, I'm probably going to keep doing it as long as I can.
I think that's awesome. So I know you say you're still proud of your crew to this day. And those of you who are serving on the Cole during that fateful day still keep in touch. Were there any people that just said, I can't do this, get me out of the Navy. I don't care how you do it, just get me out?
I don't think they were. I think everyone, I will tell you, everyone realizes when you go through an event like this, every single person on board that ship was affected by post-traumatic stress. At the end of the day, though, I was blessed with a father who had been a psychologist, and I just told my crew, I said, look, everything we're experiencing, some of the anxiety, the nightmares, the anger, the frustration, the sleeplessness, the lethargy, hey, guess what? It's all normal. It's how your body and your mind processes through a traumatic event. But you want to know something? We have each other's backs. We are a team, and we're going to get through this together. And I think because of that, well, sure, there were some of my sailors were eventually diagnosed and had to be discharged because of diagnosed post-traumatic stress disorder. I think the incidence was far lower. And while many of them still have those memories today, I think they view it more as, hey, look, I can't change what happened. What I saw, what I experienced is part of the fabric of my life. Now what I have to do is take that experience, though, and use it for as much good as possible. Don't let the memory of those that we lost go into the dustbin of history. Keep their memory alive. Pray for them every day, but also look to the future to build a better nation.
I think that's outstanding. And I think the fact that you were blessed with a father who was a psychologist, I think that actually was one of those uncharted resources that you were able to draw on to help the men and women on your crew through this. Now, for those of my listeners who are just kind of going, so how does this relate to today? What would you say to them? What would you say if someone's like, so what? Well, how does this relate
I'd
to
look
today?
at them and say that attack today is as relevant as the day it happened because the threat of terrorism still exists. The attack on USS Cole was fundamentally different than the other attacks, whether it was the Beirut barrack bombing in 1983, whether it was World Trade Center 1 in 1993, or the embassy bombings in 1998. Each of those were attacks against buildings that housed and represented U.S. interests. The attack on Cole was an attack on our ability as a nation to defend ourselves. It was an act of war. And I had two administrations who didn't do anything. The Clinton administration just wanted to wrap up the investigation and get out of office without leaving any political baggage on the table. By the same token, the Bush administration took an attitude of we're forward-looking, not backward-acting. They did nothing. And while we'll never be able to answer the question, had we responded to the attack on Cole, would we have detected the planning or been able to stop 9/11? We'll never know. Doing nothing sealed our fate, which should teach us as a nation. If you harm or you attack, wound or kill an American anywhere, our nation should have a standing policy that we are going to hunt you down and we're either going to capture you and hold you accountable or we're going to kill you, one or the other. And there is no negotiation anymore. There is no talking to these people. There is no reasoning with these people. They understand that we're going to do one of two things. We're going to take you off the battlefield, and we're going to either detain you for the duration of the conflict, which might be their natural life when we have a right to do under international law, or we're going to kill you, period. This isn't a negotiation process when you're trying to kill children. on the field of battle and claiming that they're martyrs. No, that dog doesn't hunt with me. So I think that we just need to be harder in our resolve than we have ever been. And we should be demanding accountability from our government to ensure that we continue this fight and begin to hold those governments that continue to allow these terrorists to be financed, equipped, and trained and go conduct these operations, that we're not going to tolerate it.
Wow. Can I ask you to hang on while we take a brief commercial break?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Jesse, I'm going to have to wrap it up here in a minute, though, so I'm not going to be able to do a full hour. I know you were kind of hoping for that, but I'm going to have to, when we come back, we'll just need to wrap it up, and then I can come back on for a follow-on show sometime in the future.
Well, then, why don't we hold off on the commercial break and just wrap this up? I have to say it's been absolutely fascinating, and you are welcome back anytime, Commander Lippold. And I thank you for your service. You are one of those commanders who I hope every sailor or every member of the United States Armed Forces has the same type of experience, that they actually know the men and women under their chain of command. They're not just numbers. They're not just cogs in the wheel.
Well, I'll tell you, Jesse, I consider having had command of those sailors at that point in our nation's history to be one of the highest honors of my life and greatest privileges that I've ever been able to serve with them. And I would do it again anywhere, anytime, under any circumstances.
Well, I have to say that both of the fallen who I happen to have personally known would have, if you could have woken them up, would have happily said, let's do it again.
And that's why we're the greatest nation on the face of the earth.
So I do have one last question for you before we totally wrap up.
Okay.
The United States Special Forces, and I think he was Army, but don't quote me, that was killed under Trump. There's only been one that's made the news.
Right.
People are saying, oh, his life was in vain, this happened, it shouldn't have happened. And my response to that has been, that man wouldn't, if you could wake him up and talk to him, that man would not feel like he gave his life in vain. He would probably say, I gave my life protecting the man to my left, the man to my right, and the flag on my arm.
I think you're absolutely right. And I think we each go into that. We hope it doesn't happen to us, but you never know what God's plan is for us and how long we have here. So you wake up every day and you do your duty to the best of your ability.
And they, according to news reports, and of course I'm going off just what's been published in the news. I do have a little bit of inside baseball given my past, but I never share that on air. They have gotten valuable intelligence from that raid. So in my mind...
absolutely. All the stuff that you heard on the news about, the father won't speak to Trump and, their family issues and everything else. I will tell you right now, the greatest honor that man had was the recognition by his wife at the State of the Union address when she looked to heaven and thanked him for giving her that opportunity to be recognized in front of a nation for the sacrifice that family had endured.
Not to mention the volume of the clapping and the ovation and the length of it was huge.
It was. And shame on those couple people that chose not to stand. It speaks volumes about them as human beings.
So I'm glad to know that we're on the same page. That man did not die in vain.
Nope, he certainly did not.
Well, any parting thoughts or comments?
The only thing I'd say is thank you to all of your listeners out there, because you are truly the ones that make a difference. And it is because of your support that those young men and women can choose what I call a life of consequence to serve our nation and go out there and do it, because the people that support them are the ones that stay back here at home and help the families get through those difficult times, whether they come home safely or whether they go and make the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. It's your listeners who make us the greatest nation on the face of the earth.
Well, thank you. And at the end of every interview on our station here at KLRN Radio, we always offer guests the chance to give out their social media or other contact information that they'd like to share.
Easily. I actually have a website, Jesse. It's just www.kirklippold.com, just like my name, KIRK Lippold.com. You can see my website, or you can Google me. You know, kind of terrible when you Google yourself and there's tens of thousands of entries on it. But the only other thing that I would tell people is that if they really want to learn about the story of the attack on USS Cole, I wrote a book. It is called Front Burner, Al-Qaeda's Attack on the USS Cole, and it's available at Barnes & Noble or Amazon.com. And I would encourage your readers to get a copy and go through it, because it's a brutally honest account. There were no holds barred, and you know, I tell about the decisions I made that were right and the mistakes that I made while I was in command and during those trying 17 days we were in port. But it's a real lesson in, hey, when you do something wrong, how do you recover from it? Pick yourselves up by your bootstraps and keep marching forward. So, again, thank you for letting me get that out to your listeners.
Anytime, Commander. And I have to say that you are not only welcome back on this show, I will put a link to that book I'll make sure a link to that book gets somewhere on the KLRN radio website. In fact, I will put it under the advertisers and affiliates section. I happen to be double as...
Well, thank you.
I happen to double as webmaster, so I know where it's going to land.
Certain advantages.
I wear a couple of hats. What can I say? Well, I thank you so much for being a guest, and I can't wait till we have you back.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it, and we'll be in touch. Thank you to all your listeners.